What I observe unfolding through sophisticated prediction market analysis regarding Supreme Leader Khamenei's position represents nothing less than systematic intelligence community and financial market assessment that Iranian regime faces imminent leadership transition by March 31st, with over $31 million in trading volume supporting 92.8% probability that fundamental power structure changes are inevitable within weeks rather than months of current domestic crisis escalation. The intelligence assessments I have reviewed indicate that prediction markets often provide more accurate and timely indicators of regime stability and leadership transition than traditional diplomatic reporting or intelligence analysis. And when financial markets demonstrate this level of confidence in Iranian Supreme Leader removal, we are looking at systematic institutional collapse that creates unprecedented regional security implications and nuclear weapons development uncertainty. What makes these prediction market signals particularly significant for Iranian regime analysis is that sophisticated investors and intelligence professionals with access to classified assessments and regional expertise are placing substantial financial resources behind systematic evaluation that Khamenei's authority cannot survive current domestic opposition, economic pressure, and institutional legitimacy crisis that has evolved beyond traditional authoritarian control mechanisms. The intelligence is clear, crystal clear, that when prediction markets achieve 92% confidence levels with this volume of sophisticated investment, we are looking at convergence of multiple intelligence indicators that suggest imminent regime transition rather than continued authoritarian stability through repression and economic manipulation. Congressional intelligence briefings have indicated systematic concerns about Iranian regime stability and succession planning, while current domestic protests and economic crisis create unprecedented pressure on Supreme Leader authority and institutional control mechanisms that have maintained theocratic governance for over 4 decades. I think what we need to understand about this prediction market analysis is that it represents systematic aggregation of intelligence information, regional expertise, and financial analysis that suggests Iranian theocratic system faces fundamental existential crisis that traditional authoritarian survival strategies cannot adequately address through continued domestic repression and regional proxy warfare. But there is also the immediate nuclear weapons implications that create systematic urgency, because Supreme Leader transition during advanced nuclear weapons development creates unprecedented scenarios where nuclear facilities, weapons research, and enrichment capabilities could fall under control of various competing Iranian factions, opposition groups, or regional powers without adequate security protocols and international oversight during political transition and governance instability. I am analyzing intelligence community assessments that detail systematic concerns about nuclear weapons development continuity, facility security, and international monitoring capabilities during potential Iranian regime transition that could occur within weeks of current domestic crisis escalation. What troubles me most profoundly about the regional security implications is that Khamenei's succession crisis occurs simultaneously with Iranian proxy network coordination throughout Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, while nuclear weapons development approaches critical thresholds that could require immediate international intervention or Israeli preventive operations before regime transition enables nuclear weapons capability or proliferation to non-state actors and regional powers without adequate non-proliferation controls and security frameworks. The intelligence community faces systematic challenges in assessing succession scenarios, factional competition dynamics, and governance transition possibilities, while Iranian regime maintains information restrictions and security crackdowns that prevent adequate intelligence collection about opposition organizational capabilities, military loyalty patterns, and institutional succession mechanisms that democratic transition or continued authoritarian governance would require during fundamental leadership change and power structure modification. Congressional oversight reveals systematic gaps in American policy frameworks for addressing Iranian regime transition scenarios, while existing strategies assume continued theocratic governance and Supreme Leader authority rather than fundamental power structure changes that succession crisis and regime collapse could create for regional security relationships, nuclear weapons development, and proxy network coordination throughout the Middle East during political transition and institutional reconstruction periods. You know, when I analyze the timing implications of March 31st deadline assessment, what becomes clear is that prediction market analysis suggests Iranian regime crisis operates according to compressed timeline that aligns with domestic opposition momentum, economic pressure escalation, and potential international intervention scenarios that could exploit regime weakness for comprehensive policy change and regional security framework modification before new Iranian leadership establishes consolidated authority and strategic direction. The succession dynamics include systematic uncertainty about factional competition between Revolutionary Guard leadership, clerical establishment, and potential opposition forces, while each faction maintains different relationships with nuclear weapons development, regional proxy networks, and international cooperation that American policy and regional security frameworks would need to address through differentiated engagement strategies and alliance coordination mechanisms during transition period uncertainty and power consolidation processes. But there is also systematic opportunity for American diplomatic engagement that addresses legitimate Iranian security concerns and regional influence requirements while preventing nuclear weapons development and proxy warfare escalation through comprehensive regional security frameworks, economic cooperation initiatives, and international monitoring agreements that provide Iranian successor leadership with strategic alternatives to continued authoritarian governance and regional conflict escalation that current crisis trajectory appears to enable. I think what we need to recognize about the broader precedent implications is that successful regime transition in Iran through domestic opposition and economic pressure demonstrates that sophisticated authoritarian systems cannot indefinitely maintain power through repression and proxy warfare, while prediction market analysis provides early warning indicators that traditional intelligence reporting and diplomatic assessment may miss during initial phases of systematic regime instability and leadership crisis development. The nuclear proliferation implications extend beyond immediate Iranian weapons development into systematic demonstration of proliferation risks during regime transition and governance instability, while nuclear facilities, weapons research, and enrichment capabilities require continuous security and international oversight that political transition and factional competition could systematically compromise through divided authority and institutional breakdown that non-proliferation frameworks were not designed to address during fundamental governance change. Congressional intelligence oversight confronts unprecedented scenarios where regime transition creates both systematic opportunities for nuclear weapons program elimination and maximum risks for proliferation to various Iranian factions or regional powers, while American policy frameworks assume either continued theocratic governance or democratic transition rather than potential fragmentation and continued authoritarian competition between different Iranian power centers with varying nuclear weapons and regional warfare capabilities. What makes this succession crisis particularly complex for American strategic planning is that different potential Iranian successors maintain varying relationships with nuclear weapons development, proxy network coordination, and regional alliance systems, while American policy response requires preparation for multiple succession scenarios, including continued theocratic governance, military leadership, clerical establishment control, or potential democratic transition that would necessitate differentiated diplomatic engagement and regional security coordination. The regional alliance implications include systematic preparation by Israeli, Saudi, and other regional powers for Iranian leadership transition, while succession uncertainty creates both opportunities for regional security cooperation and risks for preventive military operations or proxy warfare escalation during Iranian political transition that could exceed current alliance coordination capabilities and regional stability management frameworks during extended governance instability and power consolidation processes. The intelligence collection implications reveal systematic challenges in monitoring Iranian regime stability indicators, factional competition dynamics, and succession planning, while Iranian security restrictions and information control prevent adequate assessment of opposition, organizational strength, military loyalty patterns, and institutional succession mechanisms that policy decision-making and strategic planning require for effective American engagement during potential regime transition and regional security framework modification. But there is also the economic implications that suggest Iranian regime transition could eliminate sanctions enforcement requirements while creating opportunities for regional economic cooperation and energy market stabilization that current Iranian isolation and proxy warfare have systematically prevented through authoritarian governance and regional conflict escalation that sanctions pressure and international isolation were designed to address through diplomatic engagement and negotiated resolution. Recovery scenarios from Iranian regime transition require comprehensive regional security reconstruction, nuclear facility security, governance transition assistance, and economic cooperation frameworks that exceed current American policy capabilities and international institutional capacity, while succession timeline compression prevents adequate preparation for post-transition regional relationships and security architecture that Iranian regime change would necessitate for sustained regional stability and American strategic interest protection. As I conclude this analysis, I recognize that prediction market signals indicating Khamenei's succession by March 31st represent more than Iranian domestic political change or regional leadership transition, but rather systematic intelligence indicator that suggests fundamental transformation of Middle Eastern power relationships while creating unprecedented opportunities and risks for nuclear weapons development, regional security cooperation, and American strategic engagement that require immediate policy preparation and alliance coordination for scenarios that could fundamentally alter regional security architecture and international non-proliferation frameworks within weeks of current domestic Iranian crisis and institutional collapse indicators.